Hey everybody, welcome back to the introduction to the tactical rifle video series. So this is the second half. We're building off of the first half. So if you haven't watched the first, I think 14 videos that we put out, go back and review them because what we're covering here may not make sense. This isn't the starting point. We're going to be building off of what we covered before. Of course, it's a good time to go back and review the range safety regulations. Always make sure that you're in accordance with the facility that you're shooting at. Just because I'm doing it here doesn't mean that you're allowed to do it at the range that you're doing it at. And because I told you so probably isn't going to fly if you break one of their rules. Now, we're out here in Crescent, Texas. It's nice. Texas, 102 degrees, so you'll probably see a few drops of sweat on me. We're at the C3 Tactical Training Facility. They've got a Facebook page. Make sure you like them, check it out. They host 3 guns and bring and host instructors out here. Great facility to check out if you're in the area. So, what we're going to do now is we're going to pick off right where we left off, which was getting a good initial zero on our weapon. So, we've already gone and bore lighted our weapon. We've gotten our manufacturer's data for the rounds and loads that we're shooting on. We plugged it into a ballistic calculator, and we've got a rough ballistic trajectory. We corrected it. We went ahead and calculated it for a laser bore light zero, and we went and laser bore lighted. Now, this is a safety note here. If you have not laser bore lighted your weapon, you are not sure where it's zeroed at, you either need to go back and do those steps now, or you need to go up and put some rounds on paper at close range where they're going to be captured in the berm or a safe area. Okay, because we're going to be shooting rounds through a chronograph. Never, never, never shoot rounds through a chronograph if you are not reasonably certain where those rounds are going to go. It can get pretty expensive pretty quick. Okay? So, we're going to go ahead and get our gear, and I'm going to get this area set up here, and we're going to go ahead and pick up and start putting some rounds downrange. Alright, so we're all set up now for chronograph. Now, as you can see, I've got my chronograph set out, and I've actually modified my older 35P so that I can shoot it from a prone position. Now, I've just done that with some PVC pipe. Just be careful whenever you're modifying any kind of factory setup. But this has worked out pretty well for me so far. I just don't like shooting from a bench rest position, which is what that chronograph was designed for. So I've got the printer set up here. I've got it at kind of a safe distance. I don't want brass hitting it or getting caught up in it. Now you notice that I am using a rest here. Now I could go ahead and shoot this from the prone unsupported position, or I could use a forward rest, and I'm comfortable doing that, but I don't like putting my clients in that kind of situation. And it's always better just to err on the side of safety. Remember, we're not really working any kind of skill exercise with this, although it's a good opportunity to work good safety procedures and follow through, trigger reset, and watching our sight picture, watching our sights, and that's great. But the point of this is just to get 10 rounds, a 10-round string through the chronograph to get good data. So there's no reason why we can't be nice and safe. Of course, I'm using an adjustable rest, but you could use any kind of lead sled or anything like that. Now, of course, the first thing that I need to do is go ahead and make sure the weapon's safe. So do a 3-point safety check. Now, of course, I've got a muzzle flag in, or a chamber flag. It's always good to use those. And I'm just going to lean forward and I'm going to check the chamber, source of feed, and bolt face. Now, again, I'm not just checking to make sure that there's no ammunition in the weapon. I'm making sure that there's no debris or anything in there that's going to cause a malfunction or a failure to feed. And it's a good time to check for lube as well. Now, of course, if your bolt wasn't already locked into the rear position, go ahead and lock it to the rear. As you know, I advocate operating this weapon from an open bolt when we're loading. It's just much easier. And we'll cover more into that later. Now, I've got my ammunition already loaded here in magazines. It's a good time to check it. Remember, if it's a fully loaded 30-round magazine, it's going to be staggered off to the right, and I should be able to press it down just a little bit. So there we go. If you've got different lots of ammunition, it's a great time to go ahead and shoot some strings with all the different lots of ammunition to see what kind of velocities we're getting. Now, of course, I've already pre-measured off from the muzzle to the chronograph as per factory recommendations. Just refer to your owner's manual for whatever device that you're going to be using. Remember, for this device and for other devices, I'm only going to shoot as fast as the printer is going to work. So after I fire that round, I'm going to do a good follow through, and I'm going to wait for the printer to finish working, and then I'm going to fire again. Now, whatever chronograph you're using, just make sure that you're careful about little innuendos. Like this, it's using sky screens. It is sensitive to differences in light because that's what it's using to help gather data. So I'm making sure that all the sky screens are in a consistently lighted position. So that's why it's pushed forward out of the shade here. So good time to go ahead and load. And of course, I'm kind of doing this administratively because it's on a rest here. Okay, and I'm going to check my sight, and I'm going to make sure that my sights are right where they need to be in that chronograph. Again, you're going to refer to your owner's manual, but also remember, at 10 feet or whatever close range distance you have, that bullet is not going to be passing through the chronograph where the sights are. Remember, sight to bore offset, and we talked about that in the last video and a couple of the previous videos. So make sure you're compensating for that. So obviously for me, I've got a 3.5 inch sight to bore offset. I'm going to have my sight 3.5 inches higher than where I want the round to go through. Does that make sense? So just make sure you're compensating for that. Now, of course, check for eyes and ears at this time. And let's go ahead and fire the string. All right, so there was our 10-round string. Notice I was firing at a good slow rhythm, and I was practicing my follow-through. I was inhaling, exhaling, doing my proper breathing cycle at my natural respiratory pause. I was resetting the trigger. I was holding it to the rear when I was firing, watching my sights, and making sure I was supporting the rifle real well. I just did that nice and slow, just building up some good muscle memory. And then we got our string. So now's a good time. Let's go ahead and clear. So we're going to remove the source of feed, lock the bolt to the rear, and do a good 3-point safety check. Remember, if it's dark, or if it's really dirty, you do need to stick a finger in there to check out. Or you can use your chamber flag here. And that gives me a good indicator that there's nothing in there. And now I'm good and safe. So let's go ahead and have a look at the results. All right, so now it's numbers time. Now during the break, I went ahead and chronoed 2 different types of rounds, just to demonstrate the kind of differences that we can find. So what I've got here is I've got 2 reloads and 1 high-grade factory ammo. The factory ammo is the Federal Premium. It's their tactical urban rifle, and it's a 69 grain round. It's not real cheap ammo, but we'll see how it does. Now, the first ammo that I've got here are some reloads that I found. I've been shooting these for about a year now. They're 55 grain Hornady and Lake City reloads. I've had good luck with them. Then, of course, we got the Federal 69 grain tactical urban rifle. Then over here, I've got some Hornady 55 grain soft point reloads that I picked up a while ago, just to reduce abuse on my steel a little bit. So I just wanted some softer ammo. But this will show you some comparison here. So I went ahead and did the same thing. I ran 10-round strings through the chronograph. I actually did a second 10-round string just to get some more data on each one. Now, of course, with the Oler, that's not really necessary because that's a 2-channel chronograph. That's why it's got 3 sky screens. It's actually checking each velocity, and it's actually going to indicate if there's an error, which I didn't have any errors on any of the shots I fired. So for the Hornady 55 grain, my average velocity was 3,079 feet per second. The Federal 69 grain was down to 2,667 feet per second. Now, this is kind of important to note because on the box here, they've got the factory ballistic data. Of course, I actually had to go online to find the ballistic coefficient because it's the weekend, couldn't call them, but it was right on their website. They fired their test loads out of a 24-inch barrel. Now, when I think tactical urban rifle, you know, I'm not thinking a sniper rifle. 24 inches is pretty long to be testing urban loads through. Now, I know why they did it now, because they're advertising a muzzle velocity of 2,950 feet per second. Sounds smoking, right? Well, I'm shooting a 16-inch barrel, which by some people's standards for urban rifles, a little long, right? Well, they did a 24-inch, and you can see here the difference. They're advertising 2,950 feet per second. What did I get? 2,667 feet per second. Now, another thing to note here, it's 102 degrees outside right now. You can usually gain double-digit gains in your feet per second by ammo that's been laying out in the sun on a hot chamber. So that's pretty low speeds compared to what's being advertised out there. Then we got the 55 grain soft point reloads that I'm shooting, and that's doing average of 3,026 feet per second. So how's that break down? Now, the other number that we want to pay attention to is the standard deviation. That's kind of the number that's used in the chronograph industry to figure out how consistent these rounds are. Meaning, how consistent are each one of these rounds and how close are they to these numbers? Generally, what that number means is you can expect about 2/3 of those rounds to be within that number that the chronograph's going to give you. So my standard deviation for the Hornady 55 grain reloads were plus or minus 13 feet per second. That's a pretty good number. Mil spec is plus or minus 20. Okay, that's kind of the golden number, and it makes it really important why you want to chronograph your rounds to make sure you're shooting good quality ammunition, and also can help you troubleshoot, you know, what kind of errors you're having out there. You know, it could be the ammo. Now the Federal 69 grain, this is Federal premium ammo, you know, so you'd expect this to be really consistent loads. Well, my Lake City reloads were beating it out. That's plus or minus 18 feet per second. That's still well within mil specs. That doesn't mean that's bad ammo. That's good ammo, and you should be happy with those results. But I was kind of impressed that my reloads that, you know, just sit in a metal ammo can were outperforming. Then over here we got the 55 grain soft point reloads, plus or minus 25 feet per second. Now I've already chronographed this ammo. I know that it's not the best ammo out there, but yeah, I just wanted it so I could shoot it a bit closer in and not damage my steel as much. And that's doing plus or minus 25 feet per second. Generally, I'm shooting that ammo at anywhere from 100 to 50 or closer on my steel, just so I'm not damaging it. Because over 3,000 feet per second on steel, you can really start to get some pits on it. Now, let's talk about how that averages to our drops out at ranges. So, just like in our previous video, how I showed you guys to find out what your bullet drop is, right? And the bug in the app was finally fixed. It updated, so it was working great today. Since I'm outside, I'm not doing a little picture-in-picture so you can actually see things going on. I just wanted to get it done here because it's hot. You go ahead and zero out your sight height, and you zero out your zero range, right? Just go back to that video, you'll see the steps. So then I can see the raw bullet drops from a parallel barrel to see how this round's performing out at range. So at 50, we're all pretty consistent, right? We're right at about a half inch for the 55 grains, and a little bit over a half inch for the 69 grain. Now, we step down to 100 yards. If I'm mixing up my yards and meters, I mean yards. It's just force of habit from the military. So at 100, this is where we're starting to get a bit more difference. Both 55 grains are right at about 2 inches. The 69 grain has added a half inch to that drop. Now at 150, right at about 5, right, for the 55 grains. The 69 grain, now we're over an inch difference. That's 6 inches now. 200, right at about 9 for the 55s, and we're already at almost 11.5 for the 69 grain. 250, okay. We've got about 15.5 inches drop on the Hornady 55, over 18.5 inches of drop on the 69 grain, and just under 15.5 on the 55 grain soft points. Then down at 300, okay. What we've got here is almost 24 inches of drop here for my Hornady 55 grain reloads. Then over here with my 69 grain, we're a little over 28 inches of drop. And then the 55 grain soft points, same thing, we're just a little over 23 inches. So that's kind of a little bit of a difference there, right? So are you going to tell me that you're going to recommend the exact same zero range for each one of these rounds? Okay, well, let's take that for an example here, because I did the math on it. Now, if we were to zero, and I'm throwing this out for the moment, just comparing these two here. Okay, say we zeroed both of these at 50 meters, which is kind of what the new industry deal is that people recommend, 50 meters, which is great. It's kind of close for most ammo. Now, for the Hornady stuff, that puts me pretty much point of aim, point of impact at 300 meters. So that's not too bad, right? That leaves me about 4 inches above my line of sight at about 170 meters. Okay, so I'm getting 4 inches above my line of sight at my intermediate range, and then I'm right at about point of aim, point of impact at 300. Now, what about the 69 grain stuff? Okay, say we keep the same zero for that and shoot it. Well, now that round's only going to get just under 3 inches. It's actually 2.75 inches at 150. So it's not getting as high over. Okay? It's heavier round, going a lot slower. And then at 300 meters, I'm 7 inches low. Okay? So if you're shooting 6-inch plates, you're missing. If you're center holding on a BCC zone, you could miss. Okay? So again, you want to tell me that we should zero those at the exact same range? No, I mean that's just crazy talk, right? You need to figure out the best zero for your load and for your rifle, okay? If you took your rifle, fired this exact same ammunition, if you're not shooting the exact same rifle that I am, you may have different numbers. You may have different results out on the range. So I'm not going to stand here and say, hey, the gospel is you need to zero at 50, or you need to zero at 40, or you need to zero at whatever. Bro, you need to figure out what you need to zero at, straight up. The easiest way to do this, shoot a chronograph, don't shoot the chronograph, shoot through a chronograph and get the data. Run a ballistics calculator on it, okay? I think that's the easy way. Some people think it's a waste of time and it's overcomplicating, but I think it's silly just to go throw some rounds through some paper and figure out where we're hitting and then just adjust. You know, that's what artillery does. We're not going to do that with a rifle, right? So this is how I like to do it. I get hard data before I go to the range, and now I've only fired, 10 rounds for that ammunition. I can go down and put it on paper, and all I'm doing is confirming, right? Pretty easy. Now, I've already done the math. I'm actually of where I'm going to zero. I'm actually going to zero off the Hornady 55 grains. I'm not rich. I don't shoot federal 69 grain all day long, so we're going to run with the reloads, and I've got thousands of rounds of that. And we're going to go ahead and set up some zeroing procedures and do some grouping and talk about acceptable groups. So, all right, there's the numbers. There's my argument, okay? What I'm saying is I'm not telling you what range to zero at. I'm not going to say that there's one size fits all. When you show up to courses, you're probably going to have everybody carrying different rifles, shooting different ammunition. Some guys may show up with 2 or 3 different lots of ammunition or different types of ammunition for one course, okay? Hey, you can't tell me that that's not going to work. Or if you're a law enforcement officer and you've got duty loads, right, that you've got sitting in your go bag, your active shooter bag, that you don't shoot at the range because you're shooting some cheaper stuff, that's what you're getting there. Okay, And you're not telling me that you're not going to show up to a scene and possibly have to take a shot at any one of these ranges. These are fairly practical ranges for outside. Matter of fact, up to about here, these are practical ranges for inside. If you're talking about hotels and schools, you can find hallways that are easily 100 meters long. Okay, so this is not unimportant, right? Okay, it's important stuff. It's important stuff for you to know. It gives you a greater understanding of what your round's doing when it leaves the barrel. Remember, you're responsible for where that round goes and where it rests at its terminal impact zone. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and set up for zeroing, and we'll come back and we'll talk about that.